I'm going to get these out of the way because I tend to be a little clumsy and I don't want to break anything. Okay, good morning. I may be one of the few people in the room that speaks neither English nor Hungarian as a first language. So I'm not even going to try to speak Hungarian. I'm going to try to speak my best English. I know the interpreter in the back will appreciate it. Just give me a thumbs up. Okay. First of all, thanks to Andres, whom I had the privilege of meeting through an European Volunteer Center symposium a little while ago, and whose passion for corporate volunteering was evident then as it is today. I couldn't say no to the invitation, although I'm one of those speakers who traveled. I did the math, because we know we have a different system in the US, but I think it was 9,000 kilometers to make it out here with all of you. As others have mentioned, we want to thank the partners and the sponsors, the volunteers, and of course all of you, the participants who are here today that are interested and passionate about this topic. We're going to skip over the agenda because really that's not as important. What I do want to say though, with this slide behind us, is that as Dr. Ken Allen mentioned earlier, I'm not going to tell you much about myself. He actually took care of a little bit of that, and then you have my bio on the program. But in general, I have responsibility for support and development of corporate volunteering programs at American Airlines at a global level. I'm also a proud member of the World Board of Directors of the International Association for Volunteer Effort and the chair of the Global Corporate Volunteer Council Steering Committee. These opportunities have really given us a great deal of learning, experience, and an opportunity really to see things from a completely different perspective. As a US-based company, sometimes one of the mistakes that companies like ours could easily make is to see everything from the lens of what we do in our country will work in any other country, no problem. Well, that's one of the lessons that we have learned, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later today. I believe that one of the reasons why Andres asked me to join you today is not only because I'm an actual practitioner, this is what I do for a living for my company, among other things that I am responsible for, but because we have been doing this under what some may consider less than desirable conditions. I have no reservations when it comes to saying that this is really good work, is very rewarding work. We're here to make a difference. But I also talk about how this is a very challenging type of work, and that it doesn't always get as well funded as we'd like it to, and that there are many challenges we have to deal with on a daily basis. It is also important to note that what I'm about to share with you, specifically when it comes to American Airlines, a company that I work for, is set against the background of what has been one of the most turbulent times or the most turbulent decade in the history of the US airline industry, maybe in the global airline industry as well. Some of you may know that American Airlines was directly impacted by the events of September 11th. I'm not going to go into the political issues associated with that, but we know for a fact that forever the airline industry was changed after that event. That decade, and more recently within that decade, has included an unprecedented global financial crisis that has impacted many other industries. American Airlines, for example, has been restructuring in bankruptcy for the last 2 years, and is in the throes of a merger with another US carrier, US Airways. Today, what I'm going to share with you is only a bird's eye view of this journey that we've been going through and some of our accomplishments in spite of the many challenges faced over the last 10 plus years, thanks to the passion and dedication of our fellow employees. I think that's the most important part of what I'm going to share with you. All right. So, of course, as a company, we always have to tell our story. Don't worry, I'm not going to read all of that to you. Probably the most important piece of the information that we have there is that American Airlines has been around since the 1920s. We serve about 270 airports in 50 countries and territories. We serve about 100 cities outside of the United States. So our footprint outside of the United States is pretty large. More importantly, we have 75,000 airline professionals that do this work for our customers day in, day out. And we're very proud not only of the work that they do every day, but we're also very proud of their accomplishments in the area of corporate volunteering or employee volunteering. So this is how we started in the airline industry. We used to fly big pterodactyls, and some of our planes still look like that. We're trying to get some new ones. We're in the process of doing that. I'm just kidding. I just thought that it was a cute cartoon. I really enjoyed it when I was a little boy. And that's actually how I got part of my inspiration of getting involved in the airline industry. I've been with American Airlines for 24 years, and it's been really a lot of fun. Sometimes some of our planes look like that, but we're getting some new ones every week, so we're excited about that. So the first thing that I want to share with you in terms of what we've been doing is where we came from. I think that journey, many times we have the ability and we talk about what great programs we have and all the wonderful things that we do, and we don't always give ourselves an opportunity to go back and take a look at where we came from. Some of you in the room may be very familiar with what I'm going to share with you, so I'm probably not going to spend a whole lot of time in some of the slides that are coming up, but as you very well know, in the 1980s, or what I call in the beginning, prior to the introduction of formal corporate social responsibility strategies, American focused mainly in making donations, and eventually the donations came from a corporate foundation to a number of organizations that seemed to fit the corporate strategy at the time. So we were infants, right? We were trying to fly the little plane and trying to make sure that we were doing basically what everybody else was doing. The extent of these efforts were limited to company contributions, mostly foundation money or corporate money that went out to a number of different organizations, maybe special joint promotions and a little, if any, employee engagement, or so we thought. With a few exceptions, most other companies were in the same situation. As we moved on to the 1990s, a radical change in the way American Airlines employees saw the world moved them to action. I think that's where things really started to change. Influenced by the golden years of the Jet Age, our fellow employees had always leveraged their travel privileges and escaped to glamorous cities and faraway exotic lands. In those days, most people traveled to fabulous cities like New York, Los Angeles, London, Paris, maybe even Tokyo, but they knew very little about what was going on outside of those big cities. While our colleagues were on these some of our colleagues were on these fantastic journeys to the glitzy cities of their dreams, some of those colleagues ventured out of the glamorous nightlife with its 5-star restaurants, high-end shopping, and vibrant nightlife, and started to explore the underbelly or the reality of what was it's like for those less fortunate to live in the cities or even in the vicinities of these big cities where we were flying to. Exposing themselves to these realities started to open the eyes and the hearts to the needs of thousands, if not millions, of fellow human beings in or near the cities served by American Airlines. And that's when things started to change. For example, Nancy Rivard, the president of Airline Ambassadors International, one of the logos that you see out there, was a flight attendant based in San Francisco at the time, and her many travels turned her dreams of a professional career as an airline executive potentially, and completely changed her perspective when she saw the reality of what was going on around the world. And that's when she launched Airline Ambassadors International, with what is still today one of the few organizations that provides employee volunteers that serve as medical escorts, where airline employees use their travel privileges to accompany children who need medical attention in another country, mainly the United States, when for one reason or another their families cannot accompany them. Maybe they don't have the means, maybe they don't have the passports or visas to leave the country, maybe they have other children, family to take care of. So our own fellow employees will work with the NGOs and the hospitals in both countries and will escort these children that can be as little as 3 months old or maybe 15 years of age, whatever the case may be. Last year, these employee volunteers that can spend anywhere between 3 to 5 days of their own time with no pay escorted a little over 200 children that needed medical attention, anywhere from Africa to Asia, all over Latin America and the Caribbean. There was also a case, for example, of Glenda Johnson. Glenda Johnson runs the Medical Wings International organization. She's originally from Chicago in the United States, and she was a part-time cargo freight operations agent. And she had also had an opportunity to travel. She had also had an opportunity to live an amazing life. But through her travels, she realized and she saw the pain of those who didn't have access to medical services in many parts of the world. And still today, almost 20 years later, Glenda plans missions with medical personnel to treat thousands of patients in underserved communities around the globe each year. She has actually gotten together in partnerships with universities and other institutions, and they have created even what is still today the first mobile dental chair that it can be folded up, put in a plane, and taken anywhere in the world to serve people that have never, ever in their lives received any kind of dental care. So something as simple as that has made a difference in the lives of hundreds of people. The medical staff also trains local health workers to provide services after the mission is gone. So on the corporate side, we provide the travel services. On Glenda's side, she puts together employees not only from the United States, but employees that are based in the country where she's visiting with this medical mission, and they come together to make a difference in a community where is needed. Similarly, a group of employees came together about 15 years ago to make the dreams of terminally ill children a reality. That's the case of Something Magic Foundation. These employees raise funds all year round, and closer to the end of the year, between September and October, depending on timing, they serve 30 to 40 families that come from anywhere between 12 to 15 countries from around the world, and they pay for all of their expenses for a week. Once again, these are families with terminally ill children. These children have probably never been on a vacation. These children, all have known their lives is doctor's visits and the pain of injections and chemotherapy and all kinds of other medical treatments. And in many cases, this may be their only one opportunity at fun, because many of these children don't make it past the age of 12, maybe even 15. So employees are very engaged all over the world, but specifically between 12 to 15 different countries to make this a reality. However, it is important to note that all this work is not exclusive to employees in the United States. We have colleagues all over the world that are engaged in this kind of work. Another example, and I didn't put it on the slide here, but is an organization or a group of employees called, in Spanish, Logremos una sonrisa, or Let's Make Him Smile. They're based in Lima, Peru, and there, since 1994, they have been working as a program, what started back as a program for now defunct Eastern Airlines, and they adopted the program at American Airlines to basically bring the employees of not only American Airlines, active employees, but retirees, employees that have retired, together with other members of the business community. And all of them come together to partner with social services, NGOs in Lima and the Lima vicinity. Another really interesting example is that our colleagues in Japan, for example, have been working very hard with the Japanese Red Cross. I think that at this point, many of us may have even forgotten the tsunami and the earthquake in Japan. Still 2 years after that disastrous event, our colleagues were going every weekend, 7 hours on a bus to Tohoku, and working to build and to clean and rebuild many of the areas impacted by the tsunami. So the next piece of information is, where did we go from there? I like to call it, let there be light, because that's when we really started to understand what was going on with our employees, and started to bring together what we were doing as a corporation. You know, we had our corporate strategy, we had our corporate partners. How are we really going to make a difference? And how are we really going to leverage the power of our corporate partnerships and our fellow employees? Well, in the mid-2000s, we realized the importance of combining the two efforts. And since 2007, we have been working basically on two tracks: supporting corporate partnerships with the added value of employee engagement in volunteering and fundraising for these organizations, obviously for our partners, and at the same time supporting employee engagement in the community that is initiated and coordinated and led by our own colleagues, mainly what we would call grassroots efforts. A good example of that evolution is UNICEF's Change for Good program. Is an innovative partnership with the airline industry that provides flight attendants with an opportunity to collect unused currency, foreign currency most of the time, from our generous passengers on board. American Airlines is an exclusive partner of the U.S. Fund for UNICEF, and since 1994, our flight attendants and others who register to be what we call Champions for Children, employee volunteers, may collect donations on board selected flights or at Admirals Clubs or lounges throughout the American Airlines system or our network. We also have the ability to provide employees on the ground an opportunity to participate in fundraising activities. And as I mentioned, there are a number of other organizations that we partner with. I just mentioned it just a second ago, how we partner with the Red Cross. One of the things that we did was also started to pay a little more attention to the importance of providing the technology needed to do this kind of work, policies and procedures to guide employees to do this work, communication support, and a number of other things that were important. So in 2007, I actually had the privilege of launching our first employee volunteering program, which we called at the time, in 2007, American Volunteers. Truly inspired by our colleagues and all the work that I've been doing for nearly 30 years in terms of community service. It was our first ever support structure for employee volunteer activities. Very excited about that and very happy that we've had an opportunity to learn through the systems and exactly what our employees are engaged in, what they're interested in, and what they want to do. So basically today, we have the ability under the American Giving umbrella to bring together employees, corporate partners, NGOs, and fundraising and volunteering activities. And for those who are not as engaged, because you know there is always one or two individuals or maybe a few thousands that may not know much about it or maybe are not as interested in participating, we also focus our efforts in encouraging others and promoting the engagement in our main focus areas of children, disaster relief, veterans and military, and breast cancer awareness. In fact, since we started focusing on numbers, we're not talking about impact, we're simply talking about numbers here. Since 2007, well over 5,000 employees have recorded, at this point actually, over 200,000 hours of service through 22,000 different volunteer projects. And we know that this is only what is reported. Probably 3-4 times more than that is what's truly going on out there. And in the last decade, because at American Airlines, volunteering and fundraising done by our fellow employees is so connected, we know that about 15 million, probably even more, and donations have been given to a number of different nonprofit organizations. So beyond, we're experiencing the most challenging times in the history of our company, from a new brand to a new business model to a merger. We know what our future looks like. It's going to be good. The details of that future, obviously, we don't know exactly what they will be. So when we take a look at what's been going on and where do we want to go and where we come from, I would like to leave you with some of the lessons that we have learned. Because again, most of the time we'd like to think that this kind of work is amazing and good, and it really is. We would also like to think that it's easy. Not so much. So we have had to learn a few lessons along the way. So for example, lesson number 1, and we're going to try to go through this as quickly as we can. One of the most important things in order for you to either continue to grow your program or start your program is that you need to know what your company stands for. You need to know exactly what your values and principles are as a company. And you need to understand, what you can offer. We've seen some really difficult times, but we didn't say, we're not going to do anything ever again. We're not going to help anybody until we start making a lot of money again. We started thinking about this and we said, hey, we have travel certificates. We have air transportation that we can provide to NGOs and other partners. How about we help them offset the cost of travel, because that's a way that they can save a little bit of money and we can support what they do. So think in an innovative way. Maybe you'll find something similar in your company. Another thing that is important is educating yourself on the issues, on the true issues that are going on in your community. Don't go for trends or for fads or for what everybody else is doing. Research your community needs with the experts. Another important piece is that you cannot do this kind of work in a vacuum or in isolation. You definitely want to engage the senior leadership of your company. You want to work with your middle management, your frontline employees, obviously, who are the ones who make this happen. In some cases, maybe even government agencies, and of course, NGOs. Sometimes we don't even think about the possibility of working with universities and other institutions that do research and studies in research, in social issues. So it's really important. You have to learn more about your workforce and be flexible and adapt to your workforce. Your business is not the same business that it was 20 years ago. So your workforce is not the same it was 20 years ago. So learn well what's going on with them so you can continue to engage them properly. Take time to acknowledge and recognize your people. It is important to give them some sort of acknowledgement. Maybe not necessarily a big award. We know people don't do this because they want to be on a platform and to be elevated to a hero status or something like that. But take the time to recognize what they're doing. Challenge yourself to see things from an innovative perspective from time to time. You don't have to change your programs every year. In fact, that is not even recommended. But take a look at what you're doing every so often and make sure that what you're doing makes sense and that it's really making an impact. And I would say that one of the most important things when it comes to doing this kind of work is to give yourself an opportunity to remember that you do not own employee engagement in the community. You're not the owner. You're not the only one who's responsible. It is our responsibility. Recently, we did in Latin America what we call our Community Awareness Days. And one of our colleagues there said, I'm so happy we did this event because I've learned more about what the company supports, and now I know that I can join others in making a difference in the community. Latin America is a region that in general receives a lot of help. Now this employee has been empowered to say, I'm not going to sit here and wait for somebody else to help me. I am going to do something because now I know that my company supports what I do. We're all responsible for doing good in the community. That is clear, and that's the reason why we're here today. The question that I would like to leave you all today is, will you continue to see the value of this kind of work, even in challenging times or during difficult financial times? Hopefully you do. Thank you.
Thank you.